Have you ever thought of what you would do if you were to start over with watches again? What if someone came up to you and said, with all of your years of knowledge around the pieces that you have, what watches would you look at differently and what would you choose starting over? See, because we're in quite a unique time as enthusiasts. In fact, I kind of see it as a renaissance in a way. Because the enthusiasts are here to stay. The last few years have been all over the place with prices, speculation, all of the rest. And what we have taken from this experience, what we have learnt, is that we are far more receptive about new watches, new brands. And it truly means that we are open to new ideas, new discoveries. And to use myself as an example on this journey, I've been in this hobby for 10 years, and a lot has changed in those 10 years. Seeing the quality of watches that have arrived now, seeing the diversity, the choices of colors, sizes that did not exist a decade ago. I would say it is a very interesting time to get involved in the watch hobby, and if we were to hypothetically wipe the slate clean, well, that's what this video is going to be about. I've chosen 10 watches that could call them a cheat sheet in a way. Brands and watches that I've been looking at a lot, I still look at a lot, that I would be going after. And to save yourself a few bucks, I would always recommend going second hand for most of them. But this is not going to be a buying guide, it's just a handful of watches that I adore for many design and aesthetic reasons. So wiping the slate clean, let's have a look. Omega being the first brand I ever got into, and the Seamaster being where it all started. And if I was to do it all over again now, the 38mm Aqua Terra. If there's one watch from the brand that I keep coming back to, it's this one. I've said this many times before, but the Aqua Terra represents a watch that transitions so well between old and new design, where a lot of its key elements harken back to 1950s and 60s motifs. When you look at its case design, colorway, date complication and how it's set, it gives off a far more modern presentation. So of the many Omegas, the Speedmasters, the Planet Oceans, the Constellations, Globemasters, this one has that go anywhere, do anything potential that I think would make for such a good starter watch getting back into the field. There's just something you can't beat about a coronet at the 12 o'clock, a white dial, and the Rolex name. It's a piece that I always wanted to experience and to wear. I never could because it was discontinued at the perfect opportunity, but the 39mm Oyster Perpetual in white. I think if I was to start over in this hobby again, this would be the watch I'd be looking at very closely, if it still existed and you could buy it for a relatively good price. I think it's a shame that Rolex has cut these simple monotone colors in favor of the more bright and effervescent variants instead. And I think as a simple, understated daily wearer, a watch that doesn't step on the toes of the professional collection but could be worn everywhere, this one does it. Doesn't it feel odd to say that finding a simple white dial Rolex is not as easy as it used to be? You're either paying an exorbitant amount for a Datejust that has fluted bezels or Roman numerals, or you're going even further in by chasing the more professional Explorer 2, the Sky Dweller, or the Daytona. There is nothing in white in that entry-level Oyster Perpetual category to satiate demand, and I think it's a missed opportunity. This watch, in all of its simplicity, hits the mark, and maybe we will see something again like it soon. Now, one category of watches that has skyrocketed in the last 10 years is the GMT complication. It is unreal how this has been picked up, how so many brands are experimenting with different styles, different languages that define their brands the best. And one watch that has absolutely nailed it, not only in 42mm but now in 39, the Longines Spirit Zulu time. And I think a lot of the time this is what we're looking for as enthusiasts. We want watches that don't only fit our day-to-day criteria, but are also very accessible and well priced. And this with a solid ETA movement with tons of detail and all the modern specifications that you would want for a daily wearer, ticks the box. Quality when we look to the dial, when we look to all of the applied parts. And a wearable size that is not only understated but is also just great to look at. I think if many of us were to start over again, seeing the world with new eyes, the Zulu time would definitely be at the top of our list. Now, a brand that I've had in for review before, but years later I keep going back to look at it because I think of what it manages to do and achieve and what it's capable of being. The Nivada Grenchen Chronomaster Aviator Sea Diver. From its size, to the collection of complications on offer, to its quirky design. If this sort of watch was offered to me 10 years ago, I don't even think I would hesitate, because so much care has gone into the cases, the designs, as well as the fact that the build and the quality, I can attest, is top notch. We talk so highly about these brands that have come back to life, these Phoenix brands, micro brands. To me, Nivada Grenchen, it's a brand that ranks as one of the highest. Now, we have seen how successful Zinn has been over the last 10 years, but the U50 is a watch that I always return back to for obvious reasons. And in this case, the newly released U50 SL. I would say it's the complete polar opposite of the watches on this list, but that's the reason why it's worth going after. There is something so charming and appealing about the design of a night diver that most people probably wouldn't even notice, recognize, or care about, but you know, when the lights go off, this sort of watch has a show all on its own. And I think of all the variants out there, and believe me, there are plenty, the UX, the U1, the U212, and so many others. This one in particular, the U50 SL, has caught my attention the most. Now the next one, you could say, is boring, it's cliche, but the Black Bay 58 GMT. It's a watch that has done something that we have requested for a long time. Not only is the watch case in a more accessible 39mm format, but the fact that they have tapered down the thickness of this case, updated the movement, and the fact that Tudor has gone this far to give us one of the best interpretations they have ever made of a vintage GMT. It's pretty good. No doubt we're going to see many evolutions in this arena, but love them or hate them, Tudor still produce some of the best quality for money Swiss watches today. Now the IWC Mark XX is another watch that piques my interest for a lot of reasons. I think in a lot of ways it's where the brand has managed to improve on where the Mark 18 left out. There's no other watch here that ticks off the vibrant field watch versatility than this one does. And as much as I don't really appreciate how they blend the Flieger elements with the British pilot elements, these two designs coming together, I can admire that it is their own language. There is something so appealing seeing Mark XX on the dial. The minimalism is great, the printing, the proportions on the dial work well. The fact that it falls into this go anywhere, do anything category again makes for an ideal start over watch. Now to the final three brands that I've been looking at the closest, Breitling and the Top Time. What started off as a Super Ocean 42mm I changed down the road because I think the Top Time is one of the least appreciated watches that they create. And as many of us know, there is so much creative potential for the brands to expand this line, and hopefully they will. From panda dials to reverse pandas, and all of the funk of the 60s and 70s thrown in there. I think there is a lot of enjoyment to be found in this collection, and in fact Breitling in general. And if you stay tuned for next week's video, hands-on review, I'll go into that in a lot more detail. Now a name that is sitting and biding its time next to a brand like Breitling is Zenith. And the watch I've chosen is the Chronomaster Original. These watches arrived, they didn't receive the fanfare that they deserved, but it seems like it's starting to pick up in traction. There's just something so incredible about this brand, and it's always on my mind, about what they offer, what they can do that other brands simply can't and won't. A 1/10 of a second high beat chronograph complication with a reverse panda dial, silver accents, an open caseback, and a design that is uniquely theirs. Just like Breitling, it's a maker that deserves a lot more love and attention. And if I was to start all over again, this sort of Zenith is right up there. Last but not least, Glashutte Original and the SeaQ, a brand similar to Breitling that has a wealth of pieces worth exploring. And I've chosen the SeaQ, I would say, as a best for last, because it has many of the elements that we've already covered with previous watches. For my personal tastes, I'd be going after the blue dial. And I think there are many aspects. The fact that it's 39.5mm in diameter, unless you go after the panorama date, which is 43mm. I believe what makes this watch so great is the fact that it is out of left field. It's a brand that most people don't know of. Most people won't even look at it twice. Now, along with the many other pieces, second-hand grey market prices, these watches can be found for great deals. And I would say personally, if I was to start over again, both the SeaQ and the El Primero would be top of my list. So these are but a few watches that I've cherry-picked for the video. Of course, there could have been many more. I left out Grand Seiko and Seiko for a reason. They deserve their own video. But I wanted to, in a way, establish a baseline of 10 watches that represent their brands very well, but I think are also incredibly capable for what they offer. And of course, in this case, we're looking at a very particular price point and bracket. If you were given the choice to start over again with the knowledge that you have gained and that you have now, what watch would you choose and why? This was a fun exercise, so if you have any suggestions on further videos around this sort of subject in the future, let me know. I think dress watches need to have their own video. And thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and I'll see you in the next one.